Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Survivor Stockwatch podcast. I'm your host, Taran Armstrong, and I am here today with a very special guest. Hannah Chaddha is joining me. Hannah, how you doing?
I'm good, Taran, and you?
I'm doing very well. Very excited to be here with you.
Very
Uh,
good to have me.
Always such a pleasure to talk with you. We are here, of course, to talk about episode 2 of Survivor 44. And we're going to rate the players based on how well we think they're doing in the game from 1 to 10, 1 being the worst, 10 being the best. I feel like I don't usually give 10s on Survivor, but maybe we will. Who knows?
Maybe we'll get crazy.
Yeah, who knows? Um, Hannah, how have you liked the season so far?
I am loving it so far. I just told you a couple seconds ago that this is like my second season that I'm actually sitting down and buckling up for, and I'm enjoying it a lot. The first tribal council last week was absolutely insane, and I was with Claire Rafson from this season, and I was like, "Wait, is this how the show normally goes, or is this like an anomaly?" And she was like, "No, this first tribal council was nuts," and she was like, "But just you wait for the rest of the season." So I'm definitely pumped, and I'm cheering her on because she's like a sister.
Yeah.
Yeah.
She seems great so far.
Yeah. She's really cool.
Yeah, I think actually she might have been the highest rated person of the previous podcast. So,
Really love
we
that
will
for
see.
Claire.
We will see. I will say I was a little bit underwhelmed by this particular episode. I
Mhm.
feel like and I'm not usually one to like be really down on all the advantages and stuff. I'm in for a good advantage here or there. I'm in for some chaotic tribals like what happened last
Yeah.
episode. Um However, it did seem like a good 30 plus minutes of this episode
Yeah.
were like looking around the jungle, finding keys to the cage. Like there were a couple of fun moments in there, but
Yeah.
it really did feel like a lot of time spent on that. And I think my biggest criticism of the last few seasons, this new era of Survivor, is that I really feel like I'm missing a lot of context for like why votes happen. And I definitely got that sense with this vote as well. Like the most explanation we ultimately get for the vote this week was like, well, I've got a chaotic side and a logic side.
Yeah. Yeah, in regards to Carson turning on Helen and Sarah and voting with Carolyn and Jam Jam, is that how you pronounce
Jam
it?
Jam.
Jam Jam? I was very confused. That is not what I was expecting. I didn't feel like the editing, I guess, prepped and primed us for that decision. And even with the first tribal council, there was a lot that we were missing. For example, why Jamie and Matthew, I think, felt the need to play their shot in the dark. I was
Mhm.
very thrown off by that. I guess in this episode, at the very beginning, we did get a bit of an explanation as to why Matt felt the need to play his shot in the dark. And it was more so strategic than him being paranoid. But yeah, the editing is throwing me off a bit. So I'll agree with you there.
Yeah, they've kind of adapted this weird uh method now where it feels like and this could just be, you know, recency bias or whatever, going in the opposite direction, but it feels like they're explaining less and less about what's happening in the moment so that it's more surprising when it happens, and then going back the following episode and explaining some things. I feel like we had that a few times last season as well, where like we start the episode and instead of they've dropped the previously on Survivor, like no more of that. Instead, we're getting like explanations for all of the stuff they left out previously, or maybe not all of it, but at least some of it. But to me, that's still kind of like a strange way to approach it. I think I would rather if they really want to go in that direction, I'd rather have that stuff be at the end of the episode. Like have
Yeah.
the blinds. Whoa, what just happened? Why did they
Yeah.
play the idol? Why did they play their shots in the dark? Instead of having like the long sort of like Jeff talking at tribal and giving them words of advice and whatever. Like how about we have those like, all right, so this is why I played my shot in the dark because I didn't want to have to cast a vote. At the end of the
Yeah.
episode is like end of the episode confessionals as the music plays or something. Like that could be fun. I think that would work better for me too, where I'm like, it feels like I actually care in the moment versus a full
Yeah.
week later. I'm like, all right. I mean, I cared a week ago, but now I'm lost.
Yeah, now I'm like, I've moved on. I completely agree with you. Almost like in The Mole, how I'm not sure if you watched The Mole on Netflix,
I
but like
did,
at the
yeah.
very end of the season, how they went back through all of
Mhm.
Kazi's spoiler alert, Kazi was the mole. How they went back through um
Oop, the Chada's connection did not like the spoiler there.
no.
There you are.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you now, but you're still a little frozen on the screen.
Okay. Am I frozen still? Can
You
you
are very much a robot.
Wait, really?
Like your movements are actually like chopping.
Oh, well,
It's pretty funny.
that's kind of cool, but not what we want. Interesting, interesting. Okay, is this better?
Okay, I think it's better now.
Okay, this is me, like trying to be a robot, but just going back to the mole, how at the very end of the show they like walked viewers through all of Kazi's thought processes. So that's something that I think I would like at the end of an episode where they walk us back through what everyone was wrestling with and how they ultimately came to their decision in terms of how they cast their vote. And then that way each episode could be like a full story that's just wrapped at the end. I feel like they're trying to go for the cliffhanger approach, but like you said, by the time next Wednesday rolls around, I don't care that Jamie played her shot in the dark. Like I've moved on. I want to know
Mhm.
what happened the following week. So yeah, it's an interesting style of portraying the story. And to me, it seems like there are still a few missing puzzle pieces. And because I'm so new to Survivor and I only started watching in the new era, I don't really have a point of reference as to what Survivor once was. So I'm
Huh.
just kind of going along with it.
Well, we did, as I said, we did get some good moments in the first half of this episode. I think first and foremost, um, the poop tooth.
Yes. Oh my gosh. Carolyn's so funny. She reminds me a lot of Claire from BB23 and The Amazing Race 34. Just like their quirks, their mannerisms. Yeah, I see a lot of similarities.
Is that Claire's future?
I could see it, to be honest. I could see it. Claire being like, "Where's the two?" Like that's just Claire. But
I'm
yeah,
sure
that was
this has been
hilarious.
discussed to death, but why? Why did she need to? So, in case you somehow forgot, her son lost a tooth,
Yeah.
accidentally swallowed it, and then she said she spent the next like 3 days uh, uh, sifting through his bowel movements so that she could find the tooth, so that she could put it under his pillow? I to
Yeah.
because she didn't want her son to miss out on which like there is a very like sweet
Yeah.
sentiment
Yeah.
behind this, right?
Mhm.
But my first thought was if I am a young child as I once was, um the idea of having my tooth pulled out of my own bowel movements and put under my pillow is far more traumatizing than the idea of not getting to put a tooth beneath my pillow, which is kind of gross by itself in the first place. Like,
Yeah.
and I certainly I don't represent all young boys, but
Yeah.
like I would have been like, just give me $5. I'm gonna be way happier. Like
Yeah.
double the tooth fairy price, and I'm gonna feel like I'm on cloud nine. You
Mhm.
do not need to go through my poop.
See, this is why you'd be a threat because you're smart, Taryn, and you're logical. And I just feel as though boys are gross. So I don't know. I don't know. Maybe that's what the rest of your species does. Maybe the rest of them just enjoy digging through their feces. I don't know. But you could be the odd one out here. I'm just
It's
making
very
a guess.
possible.
Yes.
I mean, honestly, I'll just say it. Do we need this whole thing in the first place? Do we need to be putting teeth under pillows? Can we just alter this tradition slightly to be a little less gross anyway? Can we just pay
Um,
kids money when their teeth fall out and we'll just toss the tooth?
oh, but that kind of takes the magic and the charm out of it, and we as human beings, I think, need things that are intangible to believe in to give us hope and to make our lives not miserable. So, Taryn, let's just let the kids have the Tooth Fairy and Santa. Spoiler alert, Santa and the Tooth Fairy are unfortunately not real. Oh
I
my God. Taryn,
I
how old
think
are your viewers?
I actually long years ago I did a Taran show, a Christmas special.
Yeah.
And we talked about the concept of Santa, and
Yeah.
we got I won't say complaints. I think we got a complaint. Somebody was like, "How dare you spoil this? I was listening to this in front of my children." And I was like, "Why?"
Wait, you want to know something that I take pride in? So I exposed Santa when I was 4 years old because my family and I, we went to, I want to say South Africa. Yeah, because that's where my mom's from. And I was talking to my cousins and about Christmas and about Santa. And
Mhm.
we're like, oh, we've never heard of him. And I was like, what do you mean you've never heard of Santa? I was like, oh, this large white man with a gray beard who's like donned in all red and has 12 reindeer. He doesn't visit your home. And they're like, no, that might just be an American thing. And I was like, that is not what I've read. According to the books, according to the fables and the movies, Santa is supposed to visit every single home across the globe. And
Mm.
this right here disproves that. So I smelled something fishy. And for Christmas that year, I hid in the fireplace and I stayed up all night. Obviously didn't tell my parents that I was going to hide in the fireplace because I was like, they're probably in on this too. They're working with the government. And sure enough, I caught my parents red handed and I had them bribe me with cookies to not tell my sister.
There you go.
Yes.
I see. Okay, I like this. I feel like I had a somewhat similar experience when
Yeah.
I think I found some presents that were from Santa like ahead of time.
Yeah.
And I was like, I don't remember being surprised. I remember being like, haha, proof. But then in my child mind, I said, I can't let them know that I know.
Mm, like time.
Because if they know that I know, then I'll stop getting double presents from Santa,
Oh.
right? Because my parents give me presents, Santa gives me
Oh.
presents. If I tell them I know Santa's not real, then it'll all the Santa presents will go away. And so I was like, I can't let them know.
Yeah.
And so I hid. I was like, oh, Santa's coming, right?
Yeah. Oh my gosh. That's funny. And here I was bribing or having my parents bribe me. I take payment in the form of chocolate chip cookies for me to not say anything.
I feel like that was the better method because ultimately, whether it said from Santa or from my parents, it would have been the same, I think.
Yeah. Exactly.
All right. Well, you know, we see the kind of dedication that Carolyn has for things she cares about. Um, we also I think this podcast actually got a little bit of a shout out
Oh.
in this episode. Not really, but
Oh.
pretend.
The Matt stock is at an all-time low in this
Oh.
game.
How did he know? Did he listen? I think he listened. I think he
I
went to the future, listened to the first Stockwatch Survivor podcast,
Yeah.
and heard that yes, in fact, his stock was one of the lowest last week.
Oh, I'm sure that's exactly what happened. In fact, some of these people are so smart that I would not be surprised if Carson built a time travel contraption. What's
Well,
the
this was
guy's
Matt,
name with Yeah, but I wouldn't be
but
surprised if
Carson built it.
Carson
Okay.
built the contraption, Matt stole it, took it back to his home, and then hopped in the contraption, traveled to March 3rd, 2023, and then went back in time and then went on the show and stole your line. That's plagiarism at its finest. You should sue him.
I think so. Do we think he also stole this line?
You're a little fishy, and I've got my big long rod.
I'm sorry, those two are just so nerdy. I love it.
My favorite part about this is that like she's seemingly genuinely laughing.
Yeah. That's what I mean. They're so nerdy, and I love the little nerd connection that they have.
Yes,
But
his stock may be at an all-time low, but he's got
he
a
got the
long
girl.
rod. So
Yeah, he's got a long rod, and he's about to get the girl. That because that's what we go on these shows to do. Actually, a lot of people do go on these shows to find love.
not usually Survivor, but yeah.
Yeah, well, yeah, not Survivor, but like The Challenge, Big Brother. I've definitely seen a lot, The Bachelor,
Mm.
all these dating shows. Well, it's probably partially to find fame, however you want to define that, but also like to be in a showman's.
Yeah. I will say I feel like the framing around the Matt and Franny potential showmance, I feel like could have been better. I feel like it was weird to start the segment on him talking about his ex and
Mm,
like how he had a recent breakup and
mhm,
it was a very meaningful relationship.
mhm.
Heading straight into,
You're a little fishy, and I've got my big long rod.
I was like,
Yeah.
okay, this feels weird. You could have left that stuff out, and I would have been like way more on board.
Yeah. Well, I mean, are there ever showmances on the island? I just like when you haven't showered
Yeah,
and
that's
you
the
haven't brushed
problem.
your teeth, like, ew.
It's not very common. Not a very common thing.
Well, how much do we think this is being not played up for cameras, but distorted by the editing to make it look like a flirt man's?
You know, I kind of get the sense that this is genuinely a thing.
Oh,
That they might I think especially from Matt, again, especially with the framing where it's like, you know, maybe his head isn't completely in the game in the game, and so in some ways that leaves him more open to this sort of thing. I don't know.
yeah, maybe. Um, I don't think that's smart though. Like, come on, your season's 26 days. You can talk to the person on day 27. That's
Yeah, yeah. This whole like, I liked that Franny seemed aware. We talked last week about how it is potentially dangerous to be so visibly paired up with somebody.
yeah.
It could also be a benefit, but it could also be dangerous if it sort of like gets the other four people to come together to take you out because you're a
Mhm.
threat. Um, and I was not. It was good to see that Franny seemed to be aware that this was potentially dangerous and was like, maybe we need to chill a little bit.
Mm.
However, it didn't seem like she was actually successful in in
Yeah.
doing so.
Yes. Well, that's if like how we watched it back was how it went chronologically.
True.
That's something that I'm very much having to get used to about
Hmm.
Survivor, the fact that it's not filmed in real time and we don't have live feeds, so we actually don't like we simply can't be aware of everything that happened and when it happened and why it happened and how it happened. That's yeah, that's something that's very, very different from a show like BB.
Yeah. I did find it interesting that, you know, there was a lot of talk from the tribe, from Claire, about Franny and Matt and how they seem to be a thing. Um, Based on the edit, at least, it seemed like a lot of the discussion was focused on Matt being kind of an anchor to Franny. That, hey, Franny, Matt's going to drag your game down. You should distance yourself from him. To me, that indicated that Franny is kind of the more socially integrated player,
Yeah.
because they're more concerned for her and they're not like concerned for Matt, like, hey, Matt, Franny's going to drag you down.
Yeah,
Um, you know, who knows with how little we've seen from this tribe, but that's definitely the sense I got from just that small little segment.
I would agree with you. So I'm curious to see how it plays out, but maybe Soka won't end up going to tribal before the merge. They seem like a strong team.
They do. I think, I think they have a good mix of like talents.
Hmm.
And we have these other tribes who have kind of been hurt, like Matthew with his injury.
Hmm.
Like physical strength wise, I think the other tribes just can't compete at this time.
Hmm.
Um, and these team challenges often have a physical strength component, although it's usually the puzzle that it comes down to.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, all right. We also had we've kind of finished off this cage situation. Each tribe had a different kind of cage result. We saw in the previous episode that the first tribe had Brandon find the key with Maddie, and then publicly found the idol and the fake idol with the whole tribe. Then had to play it, so it's now gone. Um, Now with Carolyn's tribe, she is going to find the key on her own. She first finds a snake. When I talked to Claire last week, she said, "Oh, have you seen the next time the preview or the preview for the next episode?" I was like, "No." She's like, "Well, it looks like Carolyn finds like the idol essentially." I'm like, "Oh,
Yeah.
that's interesting." And then we get in the episode, and she's like, "Oh, I found something. Ah, it's a snake."
Yeah.
I was like, "Oh, what a good trick! They tricked us into thinking she found an idol, but actually she found a snake." But then she also then finds the idol.
Her being like, it was her look of paranoia. She was like biting her lip. She was shaking. She was quivering, and then she like put the little sack in her pants and just ran away and left the cage door open. She was like, "I got it. I got them. I escaped unscathed." And then she like sits up very rapidly and realizes that she completely destroyed the scene of the crime. So then she has to go back. It was really comical to watch.
Yes, she realizes that the play here is to open the cage, take the stuff, put the bag back, close the cage, lock it. A bit too late, and then in a rush doesn't close the bag before closing the cage. But look, that's just what she does.
Don't, do. And then I just started like, do.
I'm sorry, you can't tell me that isn't Claire Dreyfus. Because that is Claire in maybe 30 years time or 20 years time. That just is Claire.
Do.
That is it. Like that's a sound Claire would make. I love watching her. Like she was made for TV. She's a little cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs, but
Mm.
you need that.
Yeah. Danny, on the other hand, is going to find the idol over on his tribe, on the Soka beach, and he seems to do it the correct way of all the three tribes. He finds it secretly, takes it, closes the bag, closes the gauge. Nobody is aware of what happens. He has this to say, which I thought was actually pretty good. I will say, Danny. I liked Danny in this episode. I thought this was a good thing to say.
I don't know the best way to find an idol, but I know the worst way, and that's not looking. And I am not doing that.
It's true.
Yeah. Well, and then it was just interesting to see the differences between like um Tika tribe Carson was the one I think who walked up to the birdcage and realized that the bag was slightly ajar. So he was like, "This has been tampered with. Someone and it's empty. It looks lighter than it did before. So someone has the idol." Whereas Claire and Josh just walk up to the birdcage from a distance and go, "Cool, it's still in the same place," and then they walk away. So,
Yep.
yeah.
So yes, this causes a lot of paranoia on the Tika tribe that the bag is open. And that is when we get this, to me, felt very contrived. This like, okay, I suspect this person that it's not, and I suspect this other person that it's not. Oh, and I suspect this third person that it's not, and none of us happen to suspect the person that actually has it. that's never the case. People always suspect everybody all the
Yeah.
time.
Yeah.
And so you know, this it made for a funny moment, but like this is another one of those things where I'm like this I'm just like nah, skeptical.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah. I can assume that the producers got footage of them talking about why each person within the tribe was suspicious. Yeah, so it's something that I'm getting used to.
Yeah,
Um,
they Dan Gieslinged it. They nomination rouletted it. Could you
yes.
say that you would put this person up, that you
Yeah.
suspect this person? Uh
Okay.
so yes, another thing to note that I think this has been confirmed, that the fake idol that's given to you in the cage is actually the real idol on the other beaches,
Yeah.
and it's like a three-way thing. So like the beads are real on one beach, fake on another. The medallion is real on one beach, fake on another, and then there's a
Mhm.
third thing that I don't remember. Um,
What do you think that means for the merge?
Well, it means that you could theoretically, take if your beads are fake and another beach's beads are real, you could go to the person that got the real beads with your fake beads and be like, "Hey, I've got an idol too. See, it's the same as yours." And it's theoretically more convincing because the thing about fake idols is that people kind of know by now that unless you have the papers to go along with them,
Mm,
it's pretty obviously fake. But if it's the exact same thing that you have and you know yours is real,
yeah.
you're gonna feel like, okay, this is probably real. But first they're gonna have to figure out that that is what they need to play up, and they can't show their real idol knowing that it's different. This is the sort of thing where like they throw in this mechanic, and it's possible that something weird happens from it.
Mhm.
But it's also very possible that just nothing comes from it, and they
Yeah.
don't really lose anything if that's the case.
Yeah. Also the fact that with Ratu's tribe, they've all seen the fake idol.
Yes.
So that might throw a wrench in.
They might think that somebody showing them a real idol is actually fake because it's the same thing as the fake one that they saw. They might think they're getting tricked.
Yeah. Yeah, so that might throw a wrench in the plan. But we'll see.
Yeah. All right. So that was basically all we got in the first section. We can talk a little bit about, so Matthew explained that his reasoning for playing the shot in the dark last week was in fact to hide his vote.
Mhm.
Which he really is proud of. He says it worked exactly how I wanted it to. I'm still personally not convinced that this was like a good thing for him.
Yeah.
Um, just first and foremost, because if the other players had been playing at all optimally, they would have just split their votes between Brandon and Matthew, even just one vote each, and then he would have been gone if Brandon plays the idol. Just straight up Matthew's out, which would have been terrible.
Wait, do you mean Maddie? Or
Matthew, who played the shot in the dark last week.
oh, okay.
We heard from Maddie that it was Matthew that told Brandon to play the idol, and then we kind of got confirmation in this episode that he wanted Brandon to play the idol,
Oh,
so that Brandon would stay and that he could not vote and theoretically hide his, keep his
Allegiance.
cards close.
Yeah.
And so I think the episode is trying to tell us that like this was correct because we see that Kane seems to be on the outs. But it's very difficult to actually read the like where people stand here.
Yeah.
We do know that Lauren has banked her vote, and all of that, but I'm personally I'm still like a wait and see here on Matthew in this whole situation.
And I'm sorry, what were you saying earlier? It's the whole Maddie and Matthew and
I
Matt that
know, right?
I mean they all basically have the same name. But what were you
We
saying
can here. I'll bring up the faces.
Okay, okay. Um, okay, so let's see. Matthew is the guy with the injury. Yes,
Yes.
okay. Then Maddie was the first person voted out, like Maddie, and then Matt is the guy with the glasses. Okay, perfect. Now I but what were you saying earlier about what would have been optimal for Matthew? You
Well, it
said
would have been optimal for Maddie. So
for
Maddie, Jamie Lynn, Lauren, and Kane,
Yeah.
We're theoretically all on board to take out Brandon.
Hmm.
And Matthew decided to tell Brandon, hey, they're putting their votes on you, play your idol,
Yeah.
and then played his shot in the dark so that he wouldn't have to be exposed one way or another.
Hmm.
Um, Now, the issue I have with that is that by telling Brandon to play the idol, he's putting himself at immense risk because when we even heard it from Maddie in an exit interview, like, oh yeah, I just wasn't thinking. If I had been thinking, I would have known that I could have just split the votes on Brendan and Matthew. That would have been easy. It would have guaranteed that one of them left.
Yeah.
And so, like, I never want to play in a position where all somebody needs to do is realize that the best thing to do is something that completely tanks my game and gets me out of the game, right? Like I don't want to bank on the fact that they haven't thought of a very obvious thing.
Yeah.
And so I think he gets very lucky there that they like, because even if they're telling him like, oh, we're planning on putting all votes on Brandon, don't worry about it, you know, anything can happen. Like right
Yeah.
before tribal, somebody could go, wait a minute, why are we doing this? Why not just split votes? Or they could be lying to him because why would you tell him you're putting votes on him?
Mm.
So I just think it's a very risky play here. Ultimately, it goes his way, but I still don't love the idea of using the shot in the dark.
Mm.
It's not only, in my opinion, kind of a waste of the shot in the dark, but it also I don't know that it really hides his his actual allegiances, considering the fact that it's like well, if you're still working with Brandon, then what are you doing? Like again, there's so much that's left out in terms of the edit and all of that. It's
Mhm.
very possible that this all works out and maybe it was a good move for him.
Mhm.
Just with what I was able to see in the episode, just still doesn't make a ton of sense to me.
Yeah. To me, it sounded like he used his shot in the dark as a cop out.
Yeah.
But I just don't know at this stage in the game how much a cop out is even necessary.
Hmm.
Um, so yeah, I share the same sentiments as you.
All right. Well, we get to the immunity challenge. There was a very weird moment for me. That Claire is gonna sit out of the challenge again.
Hmm.
And she has a little bit of an interaction with Jeff here.
Is
Yeah.
that a volunteer or is that a tribe decision?
Both?
Huh. Okay.
Claire and Jeff have like a little, I don't want to say feud going on, but it's almost like Claire is Jeff's daughter who like will nag for things, and then Jeff's like, yeah, sure, whatever. That's like the dynamic that I see them having.
Yeah, he's like, so you're gonna go to the tryouts for the team? She's like, no, I don't really want to do it. Huh.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I don't I have talked to Claire about this in person because she did let me know like, yeah, so I sit out next week, meaning like in this episode. And I'm not gonna
Mhm.
spoil things, of course, for the rest of the season. But I was like, why? What else did you feel like you brought to the table, or what were you hoping to use as your stock or your currency, if not, your capabilities in these challenges? Like, were you not scared that if you guys went to tribal, they would look at you as the most disposable? And she said something along the lines of she was just kind of banking on her being able to contribute the least. So she felt like if she set out, her tribe would have a really good shot of winning the immunity challenge, or at least coming in second place and not having to go to tribal. Whereas if she did put herself in that position and then, last week they won and this week they did not win, then they'd be like, oh, well, what was the only factor that changed? Claire, therefore we should vote her
Mm.
out. And I get that, but I don't know if that's how I would have approached it.
I do
Especially,
think that there's a risk there. The risk
yeah,
there is if they do lose, you've now sort of like told them both times, like, I feel like I'm the weakest on the tribe.
yeah, exactly. Like, okay, are we gonna keep her around so she can just sit out again? So that's a very risky decision on Claire's part, but from what I know about her, she's a risk taker. So that doesn't shock me about her. And she was also like, listen, Hannah, being in the sun for 4 hours with no water, does that sound appealing to you? It's like, "Okay, yeah, you're right, that doesn't sound appealing to me," and she was like, "Yeah, so I was gonna walk myself to and and not expend my energy." I was like, "Okay, well, whatever works."
Yes. All right. Well, we do, of course, see that the Tika tribe is going to lose this challenge. And, that's sorry for them.
Sorry for you.
Sorry for that. Sorry for you.
Yeah.
And they're going to have to go to tribal for the first time.
Mhm.
And that makes Carolyn a little scared.
I'm so scared.
Just a little bit.
Oh, Carolyn. Oh, everything's just very, like, theatrical with her.
Yeah. So I mean, I really don't, unfortunately, I feel like there's not a lot to talk about strategically here because as I said, it felt like in terms of what we got in the episode, it was mostly just what we saw in the previous episode. We saw Carson, Sarah, and Helen as the younger people on the tribe sort of get together. We saw Jam Jam and Carolyn had a bit of a bond, and we just see the extension of that, which is Carson, Sarah, and Helen going to Jam Jam and trying to get him to vote with them against Carolyn. And then we see ultimately that Carson is in the middle. This is something that I thought might have been the case. That Carson might be the person to be able to take the middle side here, because of a couple of reasons. One, we anticipated that Carolyn might have the idol, and that Carolyn has a son, and Carson is this young guy, and that there might be some kind of connection there. And in addition to that, Sarah doesn't have a vote, which gives people like either Carson or Helen additional motivation to flip to another side to avoid a tie. Now, we see in the episode Sarah saying, I'm not going to tell anyone that I don't have a vote. I don't want them to know.
Mhm.
However, in the exit interview, Helen said, yeah, she told me and Carson. And then also, we're pretty sure that Jam Jam and Carolyn found out because the I lost a vote thing was lost. Like she was looking through her bag and it was gone. Like they found it and took it.
Oh, okay.
So with that in mind, the sort of more interesting strategic thing was probably happening, which was, okay, Carson was working with Sarah and Helen, but knew Sarah didn't have a vote, knew that they needed Jam Jam's vote, but then Jam Jam and or Carolyn find out that Sarah doesn't have a vote, and now they have leverage to say, hey, we're sticking together, Carson, come with us. And it makes a lot more sense why Carson would go, all right, yeah, I guess that makes sense. If I can work with them and I don't have to go to a rock draw tie, then that's what I should do. And so strategically, that makes a lot more sense than like what little we saw, which was, I
Not
have a chaotic side, I have a logic side.
Yeah, I have 2 shoulders. Which shoulder is gonna win? Yeah. I'm sorry, what is a rock draw? Forgive me.
So if let's say that Carson sides with Sarah and Helen, but Sarah doesn't have a vote, that means there's 4 votes. Carson and Helen vote for Carolyn, Jam Jam and Carolyn vote for Helen. It's now a tie.
Mhm.
Actually, that they actually just straight up win that vote because Sarah doesn't have, or no, they don't, because then only Jam Jam and Carson vote again on the revote. If Carson still votes for Carolyn, Jam Jam still votes for Helen, it's a locked tie. And the only way to break the tie is for the people who are casting the votes to draw rocks. If you draw the, black rock or whatever it is, you're out. That's it.
Has
Yeah.
that ever happened before?
It has, yes. A couple times.
Oh my gosh, okay, don't spoil it for me. Now I need to go back and find the seasons. Wow.
So
What
it really incentivizes you to avoid ties at all costs because it's very dangerous.
But it's not like all 4 of them would go into a rock draw. It would just be between Carolyn and Helen, right?
Oh no, it's actually it's worse than that. It's the people who are not voted for. So the people who are voted for are now safe from the rock draw, and the people that are continuing the tie
Oh.
are the vulnerable ones.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Okay. Gotcha.
Yeah. So with that in mind, it makes sense again why Carson, knowing Sarah doesn't have a vote, knowing that Jam Jam and Carolyn are sticking together, even if he would have preferred to go with Sarah and Helen, you
Yeah.
kind of just go with Carolyn and Jam Jam. You're not gonna, especially because you can just go with them and be like, yeah, I was always gonna go with you. and just ride it out that way because he had that option. It's one thing to say, okay, I want to avoid a tie. I'm going to flip to a side I don't have a relationship with and be on the bottom. It's another thing to be like, I have an option, and one of those options guarantees that I don't have to go through a tie and I can just continue with my game.
Mhm.
And with that in mind, it kind of makes sense. Just side with Jam Jam and Carolyn.
Yeah. Okay, that makes plenty more sense than what we got from the episode. Taran,
Yeah.
have you ever thought of working in production?
Wouldn't it be great?
Yeah, it would. That's what we need because these shows are not giving what they used to give.
mm, mm. So that's the episode. Let's talk about these players.
Okay, let's do it.
Let's talk it through. We'll start with the tribe that went to tribal. Now, how we rate the player that was voted out is that basically we kind of ignore the fact that they were voted out,
Mm,
and we give them kind of like a final score on their last episode. Like I like to look at it as like how much of it was Helen's fault that she got
mm,
voted out.
okay.
What did she actively play badly to put herself in that position, or was this just kind of like you did your best and you did well, but you just got unlucky? For me with Helen, I am leaning much more on the side of just getting unlucky. I think that based on what we know, there's a very good chance that if Sarah hadn't lost her vote,
Hmm.
Helen's probably fine. I think Carson probably sides, or at least could have sided with Sarah and Helen, if Sarah hadn't lost her vote. And it's obviously not Helen's fault at all that Sarah lost her vote. It was completely just bad luck that both Sarah drew the thing to go to the place, and then also drew the lose your vote, and then also told people about it, and then also let it leak to the other people that she didn't have a vote. None of that falls on Helen, and all of it is the reason Helen has gone,
Yeah.
potentially. So hard to blame her for that. I think the only thing that you would say, like specifically, Helen might have done wrong is that both Jam Jam and Carolyn seemed to be uh, like on the same page of we want Helen out over Sarah.
Hmm.
We're not entirely sure why, but they did, for whatever reason, feel like they wanted Helen out before Sarah. That's potentially a knock on her game. Could also just potentially be like a ton of different reasons. So personally, I feel like Helen didn't really do much wrong here that I saw in the episode, at least.
Yeah. Well, I don't know because if Sarah had a vote, um, then the three of them would have voted Carolyn out. But then
Possibly, yeah.
possibly, but if Carolyn knew that, let's see, if Carolyn knew that Sarah had a vote, then she probably would have played her idol, which means Helen would have gone home anyway.
That is definitely possible as well. It's yeah. I mean, if Carson does side with Sarah and Helen, he would also need to be able to still convince Carolyn and Jam Jam that he's going with them, or at least convince Carolyn that it's not her. But if Carolyn still finds that idol, then it's still maybe Helen. I would still call that bad luck for Helen. That
Yeah.
again, similar to Maddie last week, where it's like the one person that you needed to not find that idol finds the idol and then plays it and then takes you out in a spot where you otherwise wouldn't have gone out. But I think you are right. Like a lot of things were just not working for Helen here. But that's kind of how these small tribes work. It's very luck based, especially in the first couple of votes.
Yeah.
And so, again, I'm not too low on Helen. I think I would honestly, I think I would give her a 5. Just
If I out of
pretty
10.
pretty neutral, yeah. I don't. I just can't point to anything I saw her do wrong in this episode.
Okay. I see what you're saying, but also, and granted, a lot of things are very contingent and there are so many factors that come into play. And I do feel like these factors are more heavily weighted with less people. But a lot of ways that you slice this pie and cut this cake um, seemingly result in Helen going home.
Yeah.
And at that point, I don't know if you can call her unlucky. And we may have to look to her social game to question why she kind of made herself a target in Jam Jam and Carolyn's eyes. And maybe Jam Jam and Carolyn did talk about how they perceive Sarah to be threatening and Carson to be threatening. But in the episode, we only got them talking about Helen. And they said, you know, she maps out all these scenarios and she's very forward and assertive and she's smart. So maybe she could have done a better job of managing that. But it's the second episode. We barely know anything about these people. I'm gonna have to give Helen a okay, using your rating as a point of reference. I'm gonna have to give Helen like a 3.5.
All right, there you go.
Mhm.
All right. Then let's continue to just rate from the bottom up here.
Yeah.
I think they're currently in order of how I had them last time, apart from Helen, who I put to the end. But I think this time around we have to drop Sarah down to
Hmm.
the bottom of the tribe.
Yeah.
She has her vote back, and she has this great advantage. But if this tribe goes back to tribal, I think she's out. I don't think there's any there's not a lot of outs that she has here. Even if she wanted to like even if she got Carson to come back to her, it's still a 2-2.
Yeah.
Carolyn still has an idol. You're not breaking Jam Jam and Carolyn up. You'd need to convince Jam Jam and Carolyn to turn on Carson, who just voted with them. Um, it just doesn't seem super likely that she would be able to survive.
Hmm.
And that's not great. So she's not in a super great position here right now. But I think that if she survives until the merge or a swap, that's when she could potentially get into a much better position, especially with this very powerful advantage that she holds. So I think for me, this is definitely not looking great for Sarah. I would have her at like a 4 right now.
Yeah. I agree with everything you just said.
Actually,
And
hold on. I
oh yeah,
just remembered that in the interview, because I was thinking about the episode where I was like, smart, don't tell anyone about your lost vote. But then I remembered that she actually did tell people about her lost vote. She's
I
getting a
was
3.
yeah, no, I was just gonna point that out. I was gonna say I agree with everything you said, but because she told pretty much everyone on the island and their mom, um, I would have to rate her. Okay, if I'm giving Helen a 3.5, I'm gonna have to give Sarah a 3.
All right, there you go.
Yeah.
All right, that leaves Carson, Jam Jam, and Carolyn. Now, Jam Jam and Carolyn seemed like they might have been on the outs before, considering the young people were together, but now they are kind of the power couple
Yeah.
of this tribe.
Yeah.
So much so that even though I think Carson probably makes the right call here, I don't think there's any reason to stick your neck out this hard for Sarah and Helen.
Mhm.
If you can just go with Jam Jam and Carolyn, I do think that it's a worse position to be in to be with Jam Jam and Carolyn than Sarah and Helen. I think that with Sarah and Helen, Sarah and they both seem like very capable, threatening players. Like you are also potentially a threatening, capable player. Versus Jam Jam and Carolyn have this kind of like playful attitude with the game.
Yeah.
Carolyn's, often her like
Don't. Do. And then I just started like, do.
and Jam Jam's like having a good time, like
Yeah.
sliding down big slides. Like, I think Carson seems the most overtly threatening of that group
Yeah.
and would be the first to be voted out if they got in trouble, which was not necessarily the case with Sarah and Helen. On top of that, Jam Jam and Carolyn seem to have a tighter bond than they together than they do with him.
Yeah.
So I do think he's in a worse position now, despite making the best of a bad situation potentially in this episode. So I would put him down below both of them really at this point. And I think he's still like not in a terrible spot though. I think the fact that he could decide between both sides was a good indicator of his social game.
Mhm.
That he has potential here. And so for that reason, I think I'd give him a 6.
Okay. So, da, da, da. Yeah, because Sarah lost her vote and because Carson knew about that, he really had no other options. But if it was a matter of him being the swing vote and being able to decide who he wanted to vote with, and there were no, I guess, votes that were taken away or idols in play, then I think the smarter decision would have been to go with Sarah and Helen because he
Mhm.
would be able to blend more with them. And with Jam Jam and Carolyn, he's always going to be the third. Um, I don't think Jam Jam or Carolyn would be targeted before Carson. So there's that. But again, he really had no other options. Although it seems like he's very meticulous. He seems more self-aware than uh maybe 99% of 19 or 20-year-olds. So I'm really enjoying watching him. I would have to give him a 7. I'll give him a 7.
All right. Okay. I would say I think Carolyn is probably next. I think finding the idol is great. Um, However, I think there's always going to be a concern for Carolyn. Will she be able to like really make a good case for herself in the end? That's something that I think is a concern that Carolyn will that I will have with Carolyn for as long as she's here until I start to see some things that make me feel like, okay, maybe she can actually win this game. Um, and then another thing that I was a little concerned about was the scared
I'm
the
so scared.
um, she did have Carson, but we really got from her like I'm worried though. Like is he playing us? And that's fine to express like just in confessional, especially when ultimately she decides not to use the idol, which is the correct call. She correctly identified that Carson was siding with her. But I feel like we also did get her like talking to Carson like you're not gonna betray us. Like why would you pick us? Like I don't want you to ask a person who's picking you, why are you picking me? It doesn't make
Yeah.
sense for you.
Yeah. Um I'm sorry. Did I cut you off?
No, no, no. You're good.
Um yeah, she's a bit erratic. Maybe seems impulsive in terms of her decision making, but I think that's part of what makes her so disarming. And there's almost a charm about her naivety in this environment. So I do see her in the event that she finds herself at the merge. I kind of see her being able to skate by, but if she does find herself in that final tribal, is she going to be able to advocate for herself? Is she going to be able to, I guess, attach a purpose behind each of her moves, or is it just going to be like an emotional pitch? I don't know. I would probably have to give Carolyn a 5. I'm pretty neutral on her, although she makes great television.
Yeah, I think I would give her a 6 just for the idol find and then being on top of this vote. I think it was a very good episode for her.
Mhm.
But I don't know if it'll go too much higher than that, but I am also somebody that put a cap on Gabler all season last season and
Mm.
we saw how that turned out. Um
Mhm.
for me, I think at
I
the
had
top of this tribe, I would put Jam Jam. And I'd give him a 7. I think this was a great episode for Jam Jam. He is now kind of in the majority of the tribe.
Mhm.
He's got a great ally to have in Carolyn, an ally that also has an idol. Fantastic. He's now picked up Carson. I think he really kept a level head in that they tried to get Jam Jam to flip to the numbers, but was able to discover probably that Sarah didn't have a vote, was able to stick with his people, and ultimately flipped the tribe to his favor. All good stuff here from Jam Jam. I think he's in a pretty decent position here moving forward. Apart from the fact that they are now down on numbers.
Yeah. I completely agree with you. I just who would want to target Jam Jam? I certainly wouldn't want to target Jam Jam, although I would probably do it. Uh, but yeah, I would have to give him a 7.5 to go from him probably feeling like he was in the minority because he's one of the two older players on this tribe to now having the control because he has that trust in Carolyn and Carolyn has that trust in him. On top of the fact that she has an idol, I think that puts him in a great position. um, by association, but also because I don't know if Carolyn was the one who found that piece of parchment paper in Sarah's back. I'm assuming it was Jam Jam. Um, who knows? Who knows? But I think he's gotten himself to be in one of the top positions on this tribe. So for that, I'm going to give him a 7.5.
All right. Let's then talk about the Ratu tribe on the top here of the graphic, if you're watching along. I feel like we did not get much of an update here beyond Kane getting in trouble for looking for an idol potentially. But that honestly, in terms of, again, having to just follow an edit seems so weak. Like who knows if they were actually upset in any meaningful way.
Yeah.
I have no idea what's happening on this tribe at this point. I'm tempted to give them all 5s.
Yeah. Yeah.
However, I will still put Lauren at the top of this tribe just for having the extra vote, to be honest. I think she is still the safest on the tribe because of that. All she needs is one more person, and she has at least 3 votes, which is fantastic for her. So I would still put Lauren at the top of the tribe. I'd give her like a 6, just because she's probably decently safe.
I'm going to have to give Lauren a 7 on top of what you said, just because, and I know we're not supposed to be like judging these people based on episode 1, but in episode 2, we barely got anything from Ratu or Soka. So that's why I'm using week 1 here to kind of inform my judgments of these people. But I think they found out she was lying about her
Yes.
because Claire spilled the beans to Matthew in her iconic, excuse me, I like you. But even despite that, it didn't seem like the tribe was that phased that she had lied to them. And she just has this warmth about her. I haven't really heard any of them bring her name up, which I'm sure they have brought everyone's name up, but the editing hasn't indicated that they're suspicious of her or want to target her, or they're questioning her. So for that, I'm going to have to give her a 7. She just seems like a great person to have around, and she has that extra vote. So I mean, she's in possession of 40% of the control if we're looking at votes. Yeah,
All right.
like 33%, but what?
Yeah, well, so honestly, the rest of the cast or this tribe from this episode, I really don't know. I think I'd probably put Jamie Lynn
Yeah.
just in second place, just based on last week, and then I'd probably go. I guess if we're being led to believe by the edit that Matthew's plan worked the way he wanted to, I'm still not convinced, but I'd put him in the middle and then Brandon there. But I'd give all 3 of them 5s because I'm just so lost on what the actual dynamics are on this tribe at this point. It could be anything, and like even like last week it was guesswork. This week it would be less than guesswork if I tried
Yeah.
to actually give them ratings. So all 3 of them I'd give 5s. I don't know if you see it differently.
Well, I thought Brandon handled his confrontation of his fellow tribe members well. He wasn't
It's
accusatory.
true.
He kept his cool. And in these tense, precarious situations, you really have to. You can't fold even if other people are in the wrong. So for that, I will give him a 5.5. But apart from that, we didn't get any Brandon in this episode. With Matthew, yes, he gave us rationale for why he felt the need to use the shot in the dark. I'm just not so sure if that was necessary. And then what if Maddie and Kane had said, okay, we're going to put our votes on Matthew, then he would have gone home. And I guess the shot in the dark could have saved him. But anyway, not sure if that was actually the smartest decision for him or if it simply worked out in his favor. For that reason, I will give him, I'll stick with I'll give him a 5. I'll give him a 5. With Jamie Lynn, she seemed to be a little paranoid in the last episode. However, in this episode, I'm not sure if she got a single confessional. So I don't know what's happening with her. I'm going to give her a 5. So Jamie Lynn and Matthew get 5s. Brandon gets a 5.5 from me.
Yes. And then just kind of by default, based on the only thing we got in this episode, I think that we have to put Kane
Yeah.
at the bottom. Not necessarily because he is at the bottom, but the episode I think is trying to tell us that he is, which
Yeah.
could just be a misdirect. It could be a misdirect for a future episode where it turns out, oh, he's not at the bottom, or he comes up on top, or whatever the case may be. But for now, that's all we have. So I think I would give him just a tentative 4 as kind of like the person they're trying to tell us is in trouble.
Yeah, I'll agree with that. He seems like he doesn't know exactly what's going on, which how can you know exactly what's going on in a game like Survivor? So at least he isn't overconfident because he realizes that he could be on the outs, and that might be better than someone who's like, "Oh, I've got this in the bag. I'm in control here," and then they let their guard down, and then that leads to oversight and missteps. But from the editing, it seems like the producers were trying to tell us something about Kane. So for that reason, I'll give him a 4.5.
All right, let's talk about Soka then. Again, not a ton from this tribe, but we did get at least a little bit. I think Heidi and Josh in particular were just not even in the episode.
Yeah.
But we did see a little bit of Claire. We saw a bit of Danny and a bit of Franny and Matt. So I think for me, I'd probably slide Danny just ahead of Claire right now, just for this episode, because it was a very good episode for him. He found an idol. Nobody knows he has it. He successfully managed to, cover the tracks. Great episode for Danny. And I don't know what his position is in the tribe. I think I still have a little more confidence in Claire's like overall position. But since we didn't really see anything from her in this episode and we saw Danny finding an idol, I'm going to give the bump to Danny. And just give him a 7 for finding it. Finding it successfully.
Yeah, and he's also proved to be a wonderful asset in those
True.
competitions. And like you said, it often comes down to the puzzle. Like you can have an advantage in the first part, and then if you aren't able to compensate for that in the puzzle or in like the teaser that they have at the end, then your physicality doesn't really matter, but it certainly doesn't hurt them. And I do feel like in these later seasons, based on what I've seen and what I've been told, they do maybe assign more weight to people's contributions and physicality than they probably ought to. But at least Danny has that as his currency. So I'm going to have to give Danny a 7. I don't think he found an idol. He was able to do it secretly. No one even knows that the idol's gone at this point. So yeah, good episode for Danny.
Yeah. All right. And then Claire, I think I would give a 6-2 in this episode. I still feel good about her, but most of that is just coming from the previous episode. I think we talked a little bit about her sitting out again. For as awkward as Jeff made it, it is a decision that could theoretically come back to bite her. And that's not a great place to be, but I still think overall, just based on what we've seen in last week's secret scene as well, she seems pretty well integrated with the tribe. So I don't think there's a ton to be concerned about here. But just this episode alone, there's just not a lot to go on.
Yeah, we didn't get too much of Claire in this episode. My bias would lead me to her a 10, because that's my girl. But if I'm going to try to be more objective here and emotionally detached, then I'd probably give her a 6, simply because we didn't see much of her. So I don't know where her head's at. I don't know what she's thinking. I don't know why she's moving in the way that she did. And also, the only reason you and I know why she sat out is because she gave me that context outside of the game.
Mhm.
But we didn't get that from her in the episode. So solely based off the episode, yeah, I'd give her a 6. Although it seems like she's kind of like the social hub of this tribe, although it's not like in an alarming, overbearing, abrasive way where she's like actively trying to make the decisions for this tribe. She's just very much someone who's magnetic, and you can't help but love her when you first meet her. And I think that's a great skill and quality to have in games like these. So socially, I think she's the best player on this tribe from what we've seen so far, but this episode didn't give us much more than what we saw in episode 1. So
Yeah.
6.
All right. Heidi and Josh, I don't think they were, I don't think there's a single shot of them in the episode.
Yeah.
So,
Well, Josh was with Claire when Claire was like, "It looks like the birdcage hasn't been touched."
there you
Um,
go.
but yeah, they were just accessories in this episode. So sorry to Heidi and Josh if you're watching this, but I'm gonna have to give you guys a 5. I don't know. I didn't even know that Heidi's name was Heidi until you just said it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm with you there. All right. So the big one for me is Franny, which I'm up and down on. Again, I feel like there was a good indication that Franny has at least some amount of social connection on the tribe, because people are like, hey, don't let Matt drag you down. But at the same time, it seems like she might be letting Matt drag her down. So that might balance itself out. I think it is at least a good thing for her that Matt seems to be the person that would go first
Mhm.
of the two of them. And then if Matt's gone, maybe she's not dragged down anymore.
Yeah.
I also liked what I heard from her in the confessional. Again, it does seem like she's aware of what she needs to do, even though she is a little distracted by Matt. And so I feel like she's not actually in a bad place. Either the connection to Matt ends up being a good thing, because one of Danny, Claire, Heidi, and Josh can't get along with the rest of them, and that means that the duo all of a sudden becomes very powerful. Or they do get together and take out Matt, at which point maybe she's able to just kind of reintegrate. And so I'm gonna also give her a 5, but I will keep her at the bottom of this grouping.
Yeah, I completely agree with everything you just said. I'm gonna have to give her a 5, just because even though her and Matt, I'm not sure how smart they are for engaging in a little flirtmance with bad breath. It just seems unhygienic to me. But it doesn't appear as though she would be targeted first. And I know Claire feels like she has a strong connection to her. I believe she said that in the last episode. I think Heidi's cool with her. So in the event that Matt goes first, I don't see Franny becoming public enemy number 1. Um, and at least she's aware of the optics of it all, and she's trying to create that distance between her and Matt. However, in games like these, first impressions really are everything, and once an idea is in someone's head, it's very hard to convince people of otherwise. But if Matt goes first, then hey, Franny's sitting pretty. So I'm gonna have to give her a 5 as well.
All right. And that, of course, leaves Matt.
The Matt stock is at an all-time low in this game.
Yeah.
And he's not wrong.
Not wrong. Also, Taran, can I grab my phone charger really quickly?
Absolutely, yes.
So sorry, guys. I'll be back in like.
I'll just talk about Matt a little bit. Yeah, I feel like I just feel like of all the people on the cast right now, Matt is the one I can most comfortably say is in a bad position. I think Sarah is in a bad position, but at least she has that advantage. That like if she survives, she's got the potential to do really good things. And she could even use that advantage as leverage to convince Jam Jam and Carolyn to keep her over Carson. Like, hey, I can help you out with this thing. But it's still not a great place to be for Sarah. But for Matt, he has no vote for 2 tribals. We talked last week about how he could use that as a way to like not vote him out, but it does seem like socially Franny is just in a better spot, and so they might just vote him out anyway because they feel like they've got Franny. So it's not a good place to be not having those 2 votes. It's not a good place to be that like everyone's like Matt's gonna drag Franny down. It just feels like he's the default person to leave. And then on top of all of that, I think Danny finding this idol is the worst thing that could have happened for Matt, because I would imagine that like that just gives people like that just gives Danny more outs. It gives Danny more power. And that's another person that Matt can't point to. Like if Claire and Franny are tight, and maybe Josh is with them, and like that just it's just another person that's good in the tribe. That means that he probably like basically he needs to be in a better place socially than Heidi and or Josh. at this point, and it just doesn't seem like that's the case. So I'm very concerned for Matt at this point. Stock is definitely at an all-time low. We'll see if it goes any higher, but for now, I got to give him a 2. I just think it's a bad place to be.
Oh, wow. Okay. 2. That's your lowest rating, right? Of the day.
Lowest rating.
Hello?
Yes.
Oh,
Hello.
no.
Chaddha's internet is also at a low point in this. Stock is at a low point in this podcast. But yeah, I don't see a way for him out of this situation until there's like a swap. Like and even then, like if it swaps and he hasn't gone to tribal, he still has no vote for 2 tribals. Like it's just a bad place to be. All right. Can you hear me, Chaddha? I'm gonna say that's no. I can't hear you. I can't hear you. So look, we are nearly finished. So we might need to just wrap up. I don't know if Matt is trying to sabotage the podcast so that we can't get Hannah's rating for him, but this is where, guys, I'm
so scared.
so scared. So that's about what we've got for the ratings. Hopefully we can get Hannah back. We can get her rating for Matt. But otherwise, as I said, I feel like the episode was just kind of like meh for the most part. And Chaddha, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you now. Can you hear me?
Yes, you're a little choppy, but I got you.
Oh, okay, perfect. Well, at least we're almost done.
Yes. What is your rating for Matt?
Well, I'm shocked that you gave Matt a 2 because that, correct me if I'm wrong, but is that your lowest rating of the episode?
That is the lowest rating, yes.
Okay. Let's see. I think I gave Sarah a 3. I think I'll probably give Matt I'll give Matt a 3. I'm gonna try not to be too harsh. But it just seems like he's distracted. It doesn't seem like he has a whole lot of self-awareness in terms of his game and what he should be doing and what he shouldn't be doing. And him attaching himself to Franny and being in a noticeable duo just puts a really easy target on him in the event that Soka has to go to tribal. It's a tale as old as time. A showman's getting someone unwanted attention. So yeah, probably not the smartest move. And for that, I'm gonna have to give him a 2.5.
All right, there you go. So that is the Stockwatch for the week. I will of course be back next week to talk about episode 3 of Survivor 44. I hope that we get I hope that I get more into the season because this episode was again a little underwhelming for me, but we will see. We will see as we move forward. Chaddha, thank you so much for doing this with me.
Thank you for having me, Taran. This is fun.
Yes. So that's what we've got. Of course, you can find me over on Twitch, twitch.tv/Taran Armstrong. I am streaming with alongside these episodes. If you want to watch them live with me, we make predictions on what's going to happen. It's a good time. Big Brother Canada has started as well. We did the first daily update this morning on the daily drop of content, and we did the episode recap last night, so you can tune in for those. I'm also going to be talking about the Last of Us finale that's going to be airing over on Sunday.
I can't hear you. No.
It's the last of Hannah on this podcast for now. So to check out all of that stuff, you can of course also find me over on Twitter at Armstrong Taran. Hannah, where can people find you?
Let's see. Okay, you can find me on Instagram at Hannah Chaddha. You can find me on Twitter at Hannah_Chaddha. I'll be tweeting about BBCan 11 When I can, I'll be tweeting about Survivor, Vanderpump Rules, if you guys have been keeping up with all that mess and drama that transpired over the weekend. And then you can find me on TikTok where, I do a little 5, 6, 7, 8 dancey, whatever, at Hannah_Chaddha.
All right. Well, thank you again for doing this with me. This was a lot of fun.
Thanks. Yes, this was very fun, and it's always great to see you, Taran.
Yes. All right. Well, thank you all for joining us here today, and I will see all of you next time.
Bye, guys.